Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On tonight's show, I have former FBI agent John DeSouza discussing both his book, The Para Investigators, and what's known as the Smiley Face Killers. The intro to the show is from a 2010 interview between investigator Christy Peel and Ian Punnett of Coast to Coast Radio. Enjoy the show. Thank you.
Well, I think I got the setup right. We'll check on some of those details, but I know that throughout the evening, what you're going to hear tonight on Coast to Coast is a story that almost seems too bizarre to be true, and yet almost a story that falls along some pretty predictable lines. That is to say that there are elements to this story that'll just make you nod your head and you think, well, here we go again. A case where men are disappearing on college campuses, and nobody seems all that concerned about it. The charge has been made from the very beginning that if these were women that were missing, if these were women who gone for 10, 15, 20, 30 days, there would be a much greater uproar. There would be people would somehow be more open to the idea that there is a serial killer on the loose here in the United States. But because they're men, there just doesn't seem to be the interest level within the police authorities. It doesn't seem to have the same. It doesn't seem to raise the same alarms that these cases would if they were women. Christy Peel used to be a reporter for 5 Eyewitness News and has continued to investigate what we have, for lack of a better term, we've been calling it the Smiley Face Killers, and thank you, Christy, for giving us time on this tonight. You're beginning to feel like almost like the Smiley Face Killer angle, the graffiti angle of the story may have been kind of a red herring and something that kept police authorities from investigating?
Yeah, good evening. It's funny because I think the public has grasped onto the Smiley Face Killer's name and image, but I think that in law enforcement circles, it has done negative things for this story and has just perpetuated it as a conspiracy and not as something that is factual.
Okay, explain how the Smiley Face Killer angle started and why you don't think that's the way we should continue to talk about it.
Well, the bummer in all this is that I blame myself because I was working at KSTP in Minneapolis, and we had been working for quite some time with 2 former detectives, police officers in New York City, who were convinced that these drowning deaths were connected. And when we pressed them for some evidence to show that they were connected, they brought to us the smiley face graffiti that they said they could find at these different locations. And that's what we went with when we told the story in Minneapolis and on your show and on Good Morning America. And that's kind of the title, the name of it, that stuck. Now, the problem is that these smiley face graffiti images are everywhere. We all see them. And law enforcement, that's not proof. You're not going to take an image of graffiti to a courtroom. You're not going to tie it to someone and then tie that same person to a homicide. I mean, I guess you could, but right. It's a little bit more difficult than actual hard factual evidence.
3, 2, 1. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On tonight's show, I have a very special guest, somebody who I heard on an interview. Actually, it popped up on my YouTube feed, and it was an interview he did with After Hours AM with a guy by the name of Joe Sturgis. His name is John DeSouza. He is, or was formerly, an FBI special agent. And tonight we're going to talk with him about some of his more recent works and also his book called The Para Investigators, 52 True Tales and Concepts of Supernaturally Gifted Investigators. And I did read about a little over half of this book. I really enjoyed it. But Mr. DeSouza, are you there?
Yes, I am, William. It's great to be on the air with you here, man.
Thank you very much, John. I really appreciate it. I listened to the interview you did on After Hours AM, and I was really astonished about your analysis on a lot of those cases, particularly the Smiley Face Killers case, which I've been working on. I've done some interviews with other people who've researched that case and read a number of books on the Smiley Face Killers. So I just was really, I listened to that interview with great interest and was very impressed with your analysis. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about your perspective on these cases and also your book. So maybe the best thing you can do to people who haven't heard of you or your name is maybe talk about your background and how you got involved with the FBI.
Great. Yes, William, as you said in your kind introduction there, my name is John DeSouza. I was a special agent with the FBI for over 20 years. During that time, I worked mostly counterterrorism investigations and also a lot of criminal investigation, high-profile cases. I worked, the Unabomber case, which is a case that went on for nearly 20 years, the most successful domestic terrorist in the history of the United States of America. He was the guy who was sending around little package bombs to people's homes and their businesses, and they would just see these packages that they weren't expecting, bring them into their homes, and they would then go into their kitchen or something, and they would open up the package and they would get blown up. And he did that for nearly 20 years. And I write about that in my book, The Para Investigators, True Tales and Concepts of Supernaturally Gifted Investigators. And I also worked the 93 World Trade Center bombing and also 9/11 bombing as well, the 9/11 terrorist acts as well, that brought down the World Trade Center, as well as many others. I worked with serial killers as well over the years. And so all of this sort of knowledge and experience has helped me to understand when there are criminal situations that just aren't quite right, that aren't where something is really out of place. That's why I always ask people to just, especially people who are interested in investigation in any capacity. I don't care if you're a security guard, a ghost hunter, anyone who is interested, or if you just follow killers and a lot of these mysteries and crimes that are high profile. I always ask people, please just go read from my book, my first book, The Para Investigators. Just read the free sample on Amazon. Read the first 50 pages because it's a good review of what real investigation is and what true investigators actually do. Because unfortunately, television has pretty much ruined what that means for most people in most people's minds. People don't have a real understanding of what real investigations means. And so when they see something being done, whether by police or by police detectives or by agencies like the FBI, they don't have a good sense for what is proper to do. I mean, people to this day still believe that, because of television, they still believe that if you get fingerprints at a crime scene, that's basically it. I mean, the thing is over. Or you get a DNA sample. It's over. It's done.
It's called the CSI effect. Yeah,
exactly. Yes, that's good. I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah, that actually came up in my investigation into the West Memphis 3. It's like people think that once they've got DNA, and every case has DNA too. That's it. So once they get DNA, then it's over, and they can, the whole case.
Exactly. And people don't understand that if you don't have a basis of comparison for the fingerprints, because the criminal was kind enough to do previous crimes, and therefore, you have the NCI database that has previous fingerprints to compare them to, or a subject that you have under suspicion that you can take and compare to the fingerprints, then you have nothing. The fingerprints don't give you anything unless you have a basis for comparison, and unless or if you know that the perpetrator was in the military, and therefore the military has all the fingerprints. They're her basis for comparison, or the DNA has a basis for comparison. So these are things. People also believe that polygraphs are an investigative tool, right, when they're not. I have stood in very high level multiple murders and had high government officials say to me, "Well, aren't you going to bring in the polygrapher and do polygraphs?" And that's basic investigation. Is that a polygraph is not an investigative tool. It is a coercive tool for after you know who did the crime. That's what it is. It's definitely not an investigative tool for building a case. And I have again, people just have no idea. That's why, like I said, I always ask people, please just read the first 50 pages of my book, The Para Investigators, which gives a good review of what real investigation means, what it signifies. I mean, the other basic thing is people don't understand what real. And again, one of the opening chapters in my book is real investigation, what it means.
Right.
People don't understand that real evidence can be a rumor. It can be something that, because if you take that rumor, that's called raw data, and you place it against a bunch of other rumors that repeat the same patterns and the same assertions in them again and again and again, that adds up. That adds up to real evidence, those patterns, those clues that you can connect. People believe that anything that you cannot put into a test tube and that men in white lab coats can't measure and put and take instruments to, that it can't be real evidence. But evidence simply means anything that is likely to make any assertion more or less true.
Right, and I think that's the basic gist of your book, is that you talk about the five sensory box, the fact that there's something beyond touch, taste, sight, sense, smell, right? That something like that. So I think that you really successfully related that in your book, and talked about in the Para Investigator book. So I really thought that you did a great job with that. What led you to write that book?
It was basically that the fact that I had so many, even FBI agents and police detectives who didn't really understand the full scope of what real investigation is and what real evidence is. And so I spent my entire career trying to teach people, trying to show people, demonstrate to them what real investigation means and what is involved with it. Look, as simple as this. People who investigate still don't know about when you first come upon a scene. When you first come upon a scene, the first moment, whatever scene it is, any type of crime, even a mystery, whatever, the 5 S's of investigation when you come upon a scene in the field. The 5 S's are seal it, separate, sample, survey, and statements. That's it. That's the basics. All it means is seal the scene. Whether you're using yellow tape or anything, you could use chairs, you could use anything, but you need to close off the area where the scene actually, where it occurs. You got to separate the scene. You got to, whether it's witnesses you're talking about or artifacts, you got to separate them from each other. You got to sample the scene, which just means collect, document, and preserve samples. Create that chain of custody also for materials. You got to survey the scene. It just means a visual survey along with preliminary exam, photos, photo log. Also, and then the final step is statements. You got to interrogate witnesses, and here's the key to that: is there's always witnesses, even when you think that there's not. You think that there aren't any. They're there. They're out there. You got to find them. So, I mean, this is a really basic thing. That's a basic thing, investigation 101, and there's cops who don't know this. That's really sad. But also, if you come upon a scene as a civilian and you don't see each of these 5 steps at least being done, and they don't have to be done, in a super thorough manner, but they have to at least be touched upon, each of these 5 steps. And if they're not, something's wrong, or maybe something's being avoided. So there's questions that have to arise. If each of these steps, if the 5 S's, the big 5 S's of initial investigation aren't covered, then you got to ask questions. You see, that's things like that is why I initially, when I joined the FBI, I was part of the last. I joined the FBI because I had become an attorney, and I didn't really want to really be an active attorney. It didn't really attract me. So when the FBI recruited me, when I was finishing up law school, I was very interested. It looked a lot more interesting than being a practicing attorney. So I very much enjoyed becoming
year did you
part of
start?
that.
What year did you start with the FBI?
Well, I don't like to date myself, but it was towards almost towards the 90s.
Gotcha. So you went to Quantico and were trained.
Quantico, Virginia. That's
So
right. What are you, a Marine?
No, but you
Okay.
know, I've seen The Silence of the Lambs, so you know, I
okay.
watch movies. So.
Oh, so you saw the Academy in that movie? Yeah, I was actually at the Academy the year at the same time as they were filming that.
Fascinating. Yeah.
So I saw them. I saw them with Jodie Foster.
Yeah, they do a lot of scenes there. You know, they actually her running around and doing the obstacle course. Did they make you run the obstacle course?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
they did? Oh,
yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. And the only other group, the reason I ask if you're a Marine is because there's the only other group that's very, very present at Quantico is the Marines. They have their training center there.
I didn't know that. I never knew that.
Yeah, so we see them. We would see them a lot out there at the Academy when I was at the Academy. They'd be out running in groups at the same time as we were sometimes.
So how long was your stay there then? How long did they...
Over 20 years in the FBI.
So, but didn't you have to get pre-training, or once you become a member of the FBI, then you go through training? Is that right?
Well, you get your appointment. You get your appointment, and you get your appointment to the Academy, the special agent appointment. Then you go and you spend your time, get through. If you can get through the Academy, there's a lot of people who don't graduate and don't make it. A lot of people. They get injured, or they just decide against it for whatever reason, and they don't quite make it.
Do you know what
do you know
the attrition rate? Do you know the attrition rate?
It goes up and down, but I would estimate it probably about 40%.
Wow, that's
for the most
high.
part.
Wow.
Yeah, it is.
Difficult.
But I will tell you. But let me give you a quick PSA. If anyone ever comes to your door, whether they are Men in Black or any other agency, and says that they are FBI agents, you always ask for, and for your listeners too, anybody comes to your door, anybody claims to be an FBI agent, you always ask for their badge number in addition to their name, of course. My badge number, it's publicly releasable information. My badge number is and always will be badge number 10585. That is my badge number, and that is how you prove that someone is actually an FBI agent.
Well, that's great information.
They are allowed, because there's a lot of people out there who are pretending to be FBI agents, and they really aren't, believe it or not.
Fascinating. Well, that's
very sad. But once you have that badge number, you can then, of course, see and verify. And really an FBI agent. Same goes for any sworn officers, of course. Officers and anyone who carries a gun and a badge, always.
Gotcha.
And it's very advisable to get that number.
Great. So, getting back, so you were in the FBI for 20 years. You've seen so many important cases from the inside. What led you, when you wrote this book, I would say that it has concepts in it that may not be as buttoned down as books published by the FBI, because I think your position is there's another kind of intuitive paranormal aspect to investigating that's important. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, and that's what para-investigation actually is. It's basically using normal methods and modalities of investigation, like what I was just talking about, the 5 S's of coming upon a scene, initial investigation, things like that. But in para-investigation, you also allow the metaphysical aspect of the investigation to come forward. You use superconscious abilities also to resolve crimes and mysteries, which just means that we as officers, as agents, that we should be able to no longer have to hide our intuition and our abilities that sometimes manifest themselves during these investigations. It happens a lot, and it happens in a lot of in a lot of legendary cases. It happens where investigators have nothing more to go on than intuition and some kind of metaphysical ability, and it comes forward, and sometimes it saves people's lives.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned, you use a couple cases in here, like the Atlanta terrorist bombing where the guy sensed that there was something amiss, and what was his name? It was
that was Richard Jewell.
That's right, yeah.
And that was the Atlanta Olympic Park bombing, which I believe was like in '96. And he was basically just a security guard who nobody ever expected anything great from him. But there was one night where he became the greatest investigator of all time, because in Olympic Village, when there were thousands of people at 1 a.m. that were streaming everywhere, and media that were doing interviews of athletes and families that were walking everywhere. Like I said, thousands. The place was packed with people. And he found that giant hiking bag. It's about almost 5 feet tall, the kind that people pack everything into. And he, instead of hauling it into lost and found like most people would, he actually put up a police line. He did what I just said in my 5 S's of coming upon the scene. He sealed the site. He took tape and objects, and he set up a perimeter around this possibly dangerous package. And he set up a perimeter, and then he shooed people away from the area. And people got it on camera. People got it on camera what he was doing, and it was on CCTV also. And he never touched the package. Like proper procedure. He never touched the package, but he started yelling at people, "Get out of the area!" And people weren't listening because he's just some paunchy security guard, and they didn't care what he had to say. But he started using his body, he started waving his arms, he started getting really desperate, and his voice he started screaming at people, "Get out of the area. This is a dangerous package, a very dangerous package." And he was able to do enough of that. He really got hysterical. He screamed people out of the area. They started listening to him. They started leaving the area. And just as he did that, the bomb went off. And instead of killing, 50 or 60 people, it ended up killing. There was just one person killed.
That's right.
And
they blamed him, right? Didn't they?
Yes.
Yes, right.
Yeah, because as investigators on the scene, on the ground, were watching these videotapes of him, more and more of him shooing people away, of his voice going up in pitch, of him getting hysterical as he was shooing people out of the area and using his body to actually bash people out of the area. It became apparent. What became apparent to me too, as I watched the same tapes, that he knew it was a bomb. And he did. He knew it was a bomb. But he never looked inside the package. So how could he possibly know it was a bomb? Well, the investigators on the scene, which it was the FBI, the investigators on the scene, they decided the only way he could know it was a bomb was that he was the bomber. That was the only conclusion they could come to, because they were completely based in the material world and they had no ability to look beyond that. My conclusion was very different. I concluded that he knew it was a bomb because he had some ability to remote view or to see supernaturally inside that package that there was a bomb there, because he did know it was. And unfortunately, the authorities and the media, they took about 88 days and they ruined his life, accusing him of being the bomber, putting out that narrative that he was a wannabe cop who was trying to create this terrible catastrophe so that he could be a hero. And that's what they ran with, and basically ruined his life. And there was a lot more. There was a lot involved with that ruining his life part.
Right. And then they found out it was Robert Rudolph, right? And then it became
Eric Rudolph actually confessed to being the bomber, and I'm sure he was quite upset at somebody else taking credit for his hard work, because he was a dedicated terrorist, and he had done not just this bombing, he had done many bombings. And so that was something that he actually confessed to. And it was just tragic what happened to him. And then my book is filled with stories. My book, The Para Investigators, is unfortunately filled with stories like that of investigators that use their abilities in a world that's not ready for their abilities yet. Of course, the world will take their benefits, though,
Right.
in the form of having their lives saved.
But wouldn't you say that a lot of investigators gather the facts and then they rely on instinct and intuition when interviewing suspects? So there's always been kind of a paranormal approach in some senses to investigations. Would you agree with that?
No, not in my experience.
Okay.
They maybe, the old time cops, you're talking about, the real experienced police detectives who teach the rest of us how things really should be. And yeah, there are some of those, but unfortunately, I wasn't exposed to too many of those. Most of the law enforcement officers I've always spent time with are just collectors of fact, gatherers of fact, and analyzers of fact as well, analyzers of material, and they're so browbeaten, especially as you go further up in the levels of law enforcement to organizations like the FBI. They are so browbeaten into we don't want to know your intuition, we don't want to, just stick to the facts, just give us what you can prove, what you can actually prove with hard evidence. By the way, I have a code translator. When people say things to you like, "What hard evidence do you have?" All what that phrase really means is, what evidence do you have that mind-numbed robots can actually go along with?
Right. That's funny, and that's actually a consistent theme, I think, in your book, is that you kind of criticize this kind of rote learning from society, and this, I think that's kind of one thing that you're railing against throughout your book, is there's other things other than strict materialism.
I was part of the last generation of FBI agents who were taught in an old school way as far as crimes and uncovering mysteries. We were taught a very specific way of doing things, and that way, I believe it doesn't exist anymore. I was taught, for instance, I'll give you a quick example. I was taught when I do an interview, you go through an interview, and you always have to have at least two agents doing an interview. But you have the first agent with a notepad, talking to the suspect, to the target, and they are taking notes as they are asking questions. But the second agent, you're supposed to have him there not doing anything, not taking notes. He's just supposed to be sitting and watching the subject for signs of discomfort, signs of deception, and signs of comfort, of actual forthrightness, of being truthful. And that's what they're supposed to do. That's what the second one's supposed to do. And you look at the body language. You have to study the body language, study the face, which way are they, the feet are pointing, what's going on with the hands. And at the end of that interview, you also were supposed to provide some kind of assessment on possible truthfulness, or even truthfulness, but comfort, or possible signs of deception. And I don't believe that that's done anymore. Not now.
What have they changed?
Now they record interviews, and that's about it. Now they record these the important interviews. Let me put it that way. They record the interviews, and the FBI guy is just basically there. I don't know, as a backup, I guess, with notes. And I always say to FBI agents, I've always said this: if you don't do anything more than a robot with a tape recorder can do, then eventually you will be replaced by a robot with a tape recorder.
Wow. Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a lot of old-time police detectives that have gone through the exact same process that I'm telling you right now that I went through.
Interesting. When you're like, what would you recommend as far as this kind of para-investigating to facilitate that change into a more intuitive or paranormal investigator? What would you recommend?
What I always recommend is the same. I always recommend that that police departments and training academies read my book. That they read my book, that they spread it and talk to each other about the themes, because the only way to allow law enforcement to expand and to something in an honest way is to actually go through the testimony of these cases where people's lives have been saved over and over and over again. And large numbers of people's lives have been saved by officers and agents pursuing their intuition, pursuing their abilities that are not in this world, and being able to look at the Millennial Bomber. The Millennial Bomber case was a case in 2000 where a female customs agent had absolutely, and this is in my book, The Para Investigators, where she had absolutely no physical evidence against this Middle Eastern gentleman who was very nicely dressed, who had all his papers in order, who had his car was on a ship. He was ready to come into. I believe he was coming from Canada. He was a Canadian national, and she just had this feeling. She just had this feeling that his answers were rehearsed, and that something wasn't right.
Now, you wrote that the chapter heading was too perfect.
Yes, that's the phrase. Everything about him was just too perfect. But it's like, when was the last time that, like, you go out with a girl and you feel like, oh no, she's too perfect. This is too much. I can't do this. It just doesn't seem like how could that be a basis for intuition? Because I think what she had was more than intuition. She was being told something from a different place, because sure enough, as she kept on interviewing him and interrogating this young man, she was able to develop, not really probable cause, but she was able to develop enough reason, because of his nervousness, to just be searching his car, and that's what they did. And even that, she took a big risk. She took a big risk by doing that, because she really didn't have any probable cause. I mean, you know how the old game goes. Oh, he was glancing nervously. He started to sweat a little bit from his forehead. It's like, yeah, sure, okay. But she had to use whatever she had, because she had to search that car. She knew there was something in that car. And sure enough, the searches, even though the dogs were negative, the searches went through, and they found that in a big amount of white powder. And she was like, and everybody was high-fiving her, because they were like, yeah, cocaine. They were like, this is great. This is like several pounds of cocaine. This is amazing. And they were like, what the hell is, and her compatriots were saying to her, what are you, a witch? Because this was amazing that she found this in a hidden compartment underneath a place where nothing should be, in his car. And so this would have been the largest cocaine bust that any of them had ever come across in their lives. So they were really looking at her and saying, you are definitely some kind of a witch, because this is unbelievable. This guy had nothing suspicious about him at all. And as they're doing that, of course, they're testing the white powder. And, you know the story. It comes back completely negative for cocaine or drugs of any kind. So now these guys were like, they didn't know what to do. They were completely stumped. And then somebody just got the bright idea, we gotta test it for for other things. And they were like, what other things are there besides drugs? And they said, we gotta test it for, maybe it's explosive. And that's finally what they did. And as soon as they did that, the guy, of course, brakes, makes a run for it, tries to carjack somebody. And then they bring him down. And eventually, of course, they got rid of all the dogs they had, which were all drug dogs, and they brought in a new shift of dogs, and all the dogs were explosives dogs. And of course, they found out that it was an enormous amount of explosives, and then they continued tearing the car apart, and they found all kinds of timers and mechanisms, and they found out that not only was her intuition justified, but that was justified to a level that none of them dreamed of, because this guy had enough explosives to kill dozens and dozens and dozens of people.
Yeah, fascinating. I mean, there were also hunches before 9/11, right, that were not recognized
Yes.
by higher ups. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. My book, The Power Investigators, opens up with the story of the 9/11 Indigo Kids, the Indigo Kids of 9/11. That's a better way to say it. And they were basically all these little kids all over the country. There are dozens of cases of these little kids who, in the weeks and months before, actually no, the weeks and days before 9/11 terrorist attacks happened, were having visions and dreams and experiences of the actual 9/11 event. And they were, there were little, I can tell you and these kids weren't reported by their parents, of course, but they were reported by caretakers and babysitters, school bus drivers, by people who were around these kids when the incidents happened. For instance, we had a little girl who was just sitting on a playground, and she was not playing with any of the other kids. She's by herself, kind of doodling in the dirt there, and a teacher comes over to her and says, "Sweetheart, are you okay?" And the little girl says, "Oh, yeah, I'm fine. I'm just thinking." And then the teacher turns to walk away, and the little girl grabs her skirt and pulls down violently and tells her, "Please, tomorrow, stay away from tall buildings, because tall buildings can fall down, and sometimes they fall on people."
Wow.
And the teacher just chalks it off to, I guess, too much sugar, and walks away. We had another little boy who was creating finger paints, and this is actually illustrated on my Amazon, on my trailer for the book, the Power Investigators, and it's the little boy was just creating a finger paint of some scene, and teacher comes over and says to the little boy, "Oh, that's very beautiful. These two tall skyscrapers, they're glowing, and there's angels flying out of them. Where are the angels flying to?" And the little boy said, "Those buildings are not glowing, they're on fire. And those are not angels with wings, those are people who are on fire, and they're jumping out of the buildings." So again, the teacher walks away and just thinks it's like too much sugar or something. Had another little boy who woke up screaming on his school bus because he was having a nightmare of people on fire in a building and the building collapsing on them. So all of these cases didn't mean anything to anybody when they happened, but after 9/11 happened, then there was this huge campaign for see anything, say something, and then report in and all that. Then these people reported these experiences, and they told about these kids, and these big, strapping law enforcement guys, FBI agents and officers, because these task forces were all over the country. They had to go and interview 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds who were having these visions and these dreams and these experiences, and they had to treat it as a real serious thing, because it had to be vetted out for any possible connection to terrorism.
Interesting.
Yeah. So of course, every one of these cases was negative for any, but these poor.
I had read about other premonitions. People had claimed that they had seen, the towers go down before September 11th. So I had heard those kind of, rumors of those types of things happening as well. Not the children that you wrote about, but just in other, readings online. Yeah,
I have too. I've heard about a lot of adults that had them, but who's gonna report them? These are kids being reported by other people. Right. So that's what makes it particularly interesting.
It's remarkable, yeah. You had talked about kind of para-investigating into UFOs and things like that. I found it interesting that you didn't give a lot of the UFO stories much credence. You talked about a kind of 6% rule. Can you talk about a little bit about that?
Yeah, there's a great former NASA scientist named Stanton Friedman, and he gets a lot of flack from a lot of his fellow scientists. And he has a great saying I like. He says, "So what if 95% of UFO cases are fraud or untrue or just not enough evidence to prove whether they are correct or not. That has nothing to do with me. All I care about is the 5%, if that, of UFO cases that are actually completely unexplainable and quite possibly extraterrestrial. And that's how I feel about it too. Even if it's only a tiny percentage of UFO cases that are completely unexplainable and possibly extraterrestrial in nature, and that adds up to huge numbers.
Yeah, still big.
Of UFO cases every single year in every major country. So yeah, I do believe that that even a tiny portion of these cases actually are truly unexplainable and are probably extraterrestrial nature, or as I would say, extra-dimensional.
See, I was going to ask you that question. Do you believe in actual outside of this planet or outside of this dimension? I haven't really researched UFOs as much, but I opt towards the extra-dimensional quality of these, not extraterrestrial.
Yeah, I recommend that people get my book, The Extra Dimensionals, True Tales and Concepts of Alien Visitors, because I go into a lot of cases, some of the well-known classic cases of extra-dimensional experiences by people, and some cases people have never heard of. Yeah, because I do believe that alien visitors are real, that they are visiting the Earth through the Earth, but I believe that they are not necessarily physical in our universe, that they are not cramming them. They are not like humans, like we've been taught. They're not cramming themselves into these little metal shells and sailing across the galaxies at the speed of light or more than that. They are actually extra-dimensional. They are appearing here through the Earth and from other dimensions of reality.
Yeah, and you mentioned in your book that some of these experiences these investigators are having are extra-dimensional, that they are having these, and I thought that was fascinating too, like these encounters with spirits or encounters with events are extra-dimensional. So that was another interesting aspect to your book.
Yeah, and it does seem like it's. I believe that the UFO extraterrestrial experience probably has more in common with ghosts and maybe crypto creatures as well than it does with anything physical, because it just seems like a lot of these phenomena appear to be extra-dimensional in nature, appearing from someplace else and going back to another place as well.
That's fascinating. I think that's interesting. Let's see. Why don't we talk a little bit about some of your kind of experiences in the FBI, some of the cases, if you mind talking about that maybe, and then we can kind of wrap up by talking about your opinions on current events. I mean, I know that you had talked about the smiley face killers. I would love to hear your opinion on that too.
Well, let me get into the smiley face killers by concluding with a statement on the FBI.
Okay.
Let me tell you this: the Federal Bureau of Investigation is a criminal. It's a criminal investigative agency. It has a second. That's its primary purpose for existing. And it has a secondary purpose, which is collection of intelligence and intelligence-related investigations as well. So that's a secondary. But primarily, it's criminal investigative agency, and that's its purpose. Now, when you know something is going wrong with that organization is when they are fulfilling a political purpose, because they're not a political organization, and they shouldn't be doing political things. Now, here's a statement that I found shocking, and you're not supposed to read on radio, but I have to. It's just a short statement, and there's no other way except to read it. Sure. This is a statement concerning the smiley face murders, as they phrased it, the smiley face murders. And well, let me tell people, for any who don't know, the smiley face killers is the theory that refers to the many drowning deaths of college-age men throughout the United States. Vast majority of these drownings happen after leaving bars and nightclubs, early hours of the morning or late at night. And these young men always happen to be very good-looking, very bright, athletic. They just always this. That's just the way these murders occur. And the most logical accepted scenario for these murders is that the young men were drinking. And wandered off in a drunk stupor or on drugs, and they just fell into a body of water, a shallow body of water, usually, almost always.
Yes.
And so, of course, we have there's two retired detectives from New York City who put forth the smiley face murders theory at first and developed evidence to show that it was to support it,
right.
And a great deal of evidence, I might say.
Gannon and Duarte.
Yes. And as far as, and I don't want to talk about the individual cases because I'll have police chiefs calling me up and saying nasty things to me. But I can talk about the cases generally. And generally, every single one of these young men were very fit, a lot of times varsity athletes, with their letters and everything. Very good-looking young men by any standards, not whatever you consider good-looking to be.
Some were good swimmers too, very good swimmers.
Yes, and regardless, they were great athletes in some sport somewhere, and the theory comes, of course, from the fact that graffiti always appears in the form of a smiley face, that it appears near the body of water where the murders, where the deaths occur, and the detectives believe this mark, this smiley face, is the mark of a group of serial killers. That is the smiley face murder theory. Now, having said that, let me just show you an organization doing what they're not supposed to do. Here is a statement from the FBI National Press Office, and anybody can look this up online. It's the FBI statement regarding the Midwest River deaths, issued April 29th, 2008. It says as follows: the FBI has reviewed the information about the victims provided by two retired police detectives who have dubbed these incidents the, quote, smiley face murders, unquote, and interviewed an individual who provided information to the detectives. To date, we have not developed any evidence to support links between these tragic deaths and any evidence substantiating the theory that these deaths are the work of a serial killer or group of serial killers. The vast majority of these instances appear to be alcohol-related drownings. The FBI will continue to work with local police in the affected areas to support as requested. Okay, this is the announcement that they put out, and it is completely inappropriate for them to do so. In other words, they were ordered by somebody to put out this statement contrary to their basic function. This is a political statement. When you're out there, they are there to state if a crime has occurred, and if this is, if it's terrorism, it's whatever. That's what they're there for. This saying that there are no smiley face murders. That's the function of the mayor of the town. That's a political function, folks. Law enforcement has looked into this. They have investigated this thoroughly, and I've looked at it. And I'm just here to tell you, folks. And again, this is an announcement from the mayor of the town that she should have given. And I'm here to tell you, there is no serial killer, folks. You guys can relax. This does not exist. This is not an investigative statement to be made. And so that right away, when I see the FBI put out a completely inappropriate statement like this, that a serial killer does not exist, because they're there to tell me that a serial killer does exist,
right,
and that a crime is being committed. That's their function.
It's like a positive statement, not a negative statement. Why
exactly.
What are the politics? Why do you think they put that out, or who told them?
Because they were ordered to.
From who?
That's the relevant question, isn't it?
Right.
Because as far as I can see, the director or the president doesn't give a crap about whether there are smiley face killers or not. They don't care. No. So who would care that much? Well, to me, I believe it's the people who are sponsoring the smiley face killers, the people who are above national authority. Oh. That's what I believe, but that's a little bit further on, although I think we just have an hour, right? Okay.
Well, we can go as far over as you like.
Okay, good.
Very comfortable.
All right.
I don't want to put you, it's Friday night. I don't want to, make you cut into your dinner with loved ones.
No, that's good. I'm glad you told me that. Okay. Because the people, I believe the order for this, when you see a national agency acting completely against their interest, against their mission, and doing something that they're not supposed to be doing, that means they were ordered to from a very high level. And as far as I can tell, the president wouldn't give a crap about this situation. So,
do you know when they made that announcement? Do you know what year?
April 29th, 2008.
2008. Okay, so it's
in response to the Midwest River deaths.
Okay, great, thank you.
And
I vaguely remember that.
Yeah, and so when I see that, I know that something really big is going down. And because of my knowledge, skills, and experience, I can tell something smells really bad here. And to me, as far as I'm concerned, the only ones who would have given the order for the FBI to put out a statement like this are the same ones who are giving the order for all the various police departments to make sure that they find a high level of alcohol in the bodies of these young men, that there's a record of depression in the background of these young men when there is none, when it doesn't exist, and to find other ancillary things that explain away these deaths.
Well, they make sound, a lot of these people sound suicidal, but they're not suicidal. Yes. They're actually out having fun, partying, hanging out with friends. There's no plan. I mean, it's a very strange thing to plan a suicide, but go out with friends till 1 o'clock at night. It doesn't. It doesn't make sense.
Right. So why are they so interested in generating this nonsense about suicide and depression when it's so easy so easy for the families to prove that it's wrong and it's not right? And the answer is this.
I've talked to many of the families. They don't believe any of these stories that they're depressed. Dakota James recently was found in the Ohio and Pittsburgh missing 40 days out with a night with friends, and I mean, he wasn't in the water 40 days, I can tell you that.
Absolutely. He was somewhere.
Right.
And so where was he? Somebody had him in a place.
Right.
In a place. And again, I don't have hard evidence of this, but they had him in a place where they were committing some kind of ritualistic actions that were going forward over a long period of time. And that's what I believe that they were doing. Again, I don't want to comment on any individual case.
I understand.
But what I want to say is when you see, but I want to comment generally that when you see lots of police departments across the nation all coming up with the same script, it's almost like it's issued to them, and they're told what to look for. Because look at this. The reason I read this statement from the FBI is because it's part of it is, and there's a lot of tragedy here, but part of this statement it makes me chuckle. It makes me laugh because it's just so funny. Because the most ludicrous thing you can say. This was written by an attorney, obviously. You're an attorney, so am I.
So I can hear I know the attorney language. When Alex Jones makes a general thing about Pizzagate, it just sounds exactly like an attorney wrote it. I mean, it's just like, come on, you're talking somebody's
exactly. So listen to this sentence. To date, we have not developed any evidence to support links between, and this same sentence is given to all the police departments as well. To date, we have not developed any evidence to support links between these tragic deaths or any evidence of substantiating the theory of the smiley face killers. Okay, so basically what they and all these police departments also, they use the same sentence. It's almost like it's issued to them from someone.
That's just astonishing insight, man.
And what that sentence and what that sentence is really saying is, well, you know what? That thing that you're saying exists, it doesn't exist because I haven't found any evidence of the thing that I don't care about and that I don't believe in anyway. So I'm not looking for that, and I didn't find that. So therefore, it doesn't exist. It's circular logic.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
It's circular logic.
Somebody is feeding these police departments these denials. Wow.
Exactly.
It's just incredible because these are saying the case that got me interested in this. Well, there were other things that I kept seeing smiley faces around in weird places that outside of these cases, but it was the Joey LaBute case where he was in Columbus, Ohio, and he was out at a bar and he disappeared, and that was it. Like, this guy's fitting the profile. They're looking for him, and sure enough, he's found in the Scioto River like a month later. Well, where was this guy? And his body was in decent shape. Very, very strange, and there's a real, like you said, there's a real heartbreaking aspect to these cases because in my research, I went to a Facebook page where a mother of her son who was lost to one of these deaths 2008 is posting every birthday, every Christmas. It breaks your heart. Like, she's missing, she wants her son back. So I've talked to some of the mothers of these people, and none of them believe the police. None of them said, oh yeah, he just committed suicide. None of them believe it. None. I haven't had one that said the police story's correct. Maybe Paul Kochu. That's the only father out of 50 who said anything.
Yeah, and again, let me repeat: I cannot comment on individual cases because the relevant PDs will contact me and harass me for specific evidence, and I don't have that. What I have is I have the knowledge, skills, and experience to know when there's patterns and clues that connect to each other over dozens of cases. Yeah. That come together to show that there's something more going on here. Okay, and William, here, listen, this is why I want you to eventually be on television, going around to these shows, talking about these cases. There was and I'm sure you know about this. This is the next ridiculous statement that I'm going to talk about, besides the FBI statement, which was ridiculous. There was a criminal profiler. I don't even want to say her name, but she's the one who kind of piled on and went on TV shows and piled on to the chorus of mainstream media that, of course, were locked arms with the police departments to say that there's no smiley face killers are, it's just another Bigfoot theory by people. And she literally said that on television, she said the smiley face killer theory is, quote, ludicrous, arguing that the evidence does not, in any of these cases, does not even fit what is known about serial killers. This person described themselves as a criminal profiler. I still can't find what police agency she has worked with.
Wow. That's even more incredible, because
she was making
without a background making those statements. Wow.
Yeah. Well, she has some kind of. She has a company that is a private company that calls themselves criminal profilers, and they rent themselves out for some kind of criminal investigations, but in a private capacity.
Well, but I won't name other names, but I've researched some of these other criminal profilers, and they're very mercenary. Very mercenary.
Yeah, and she's the one who made the famous statement, I should say infamous statement, that it's another reason this serial killer, the smiley face theory, is ridiculous, is because the smiley face graffiti is not an unusual symbol. And here's her quote that was published everywhere. Quote, "If you look in any area 5 miles square, I bet you could find a smiley face."
Wow.
All right. She said that it's so common that you could just find it anywhere you walk.
There was another case by another people that said that the smiley face symbol is too prevalent. It's not relevant. And there's other investigators into these cases that says it's not relevant. Well, it's very relevant when it shows up next to somebody who disappeared and then was found in water and they're missing for a long period of time. That's the problem. Booth out of Philadelphia, there was a smiley face right behind the bar. He was found. He died. I mean, according to the research that Gannon and Gilbertson did, he died 24 hours before he was found, and he was missing 13 days.
Yeah. Well, that statement, which is, that statement is shaped to go to the very heart of the smiley face killer theory and destroy it. And the reason it's a ridiculous statement is because we all have walked around in the woods. I go on a regular jog in the woods. Everyone has walked around. When's the last time you randomly found a smiley face?
Never.
Yeah, exactly. A child could tell that this is BS, absolute BS statement. Yeah. To say that the smiley face symbol is so common you could find it anywhere. Well, how about a smiley face with horns?
Right.
A lot of the symbols were smiley faces with horns. Is that so common too?
Well, there's also another one with an X in the forehead, which has an occult meaning. That was like something that Manson used to do to his followers, is put an X on their forehead.
Yes,
so that's an even deeper occult meaning. So there's a lot there. There's a lot I'd like to talk to you about, but I don't want to put it on the record. But the smiley face has an esoteric meaning. There's a public meaning. There's a smiley face you send on a messenger text, but some people use it. And a lot of words, in the occult, words have two meanings. There's all kinds of dual meanings for symbols and things like that. So,
yeah, and let me just I might as well just say, I mean, this is way out there, but it's what I believe is true, because according to the patterns that I see, and also because I'm a student of history and ancient religions, and you probably have heard me put this forward before. I believe that the smiley face murders are real, that they are a group of serial killers, and that they are killing young men all over the country. Again, this is not based on any specific hard evidence that I have. This is based on my knowledge, skills, and experience, and the patterns and the clues that I see across these many, many, many dozens of cases all over the country that continue to occur, by the way, with all the same MOs.
They just pulled Kelleher from the water in Boston on Easter morning. So yeah, that was.
And here's one of the most dishonest statements I've heard. The serial killer theory, the smiley face killer theory, is ludicrous because the evidence does not fit what is known about serial killers. Now, the reason that's deceptive. The reason it's deceptive is because, of course, it's true, but that's because this is a novel group of serial killers. This is something we have not seen before.
Correct.
But so what? Everything that ever occurs is always never been seen before until it happens. That's the thing about the SMKs. They are doing something completely different and new, and they always make sure they have the elements of deniability built in to their actions. In other words, they will only target kids who have alcohol in their system. I believe that if you are targeted by the SMKs and they are looking to kill you, but you go to that bar and you decide not to drink any alcohol that night, they will not go through with it. They will not take down that young man.
I totally agree, and I believe that there's an element of drugging with other drugs that aren't found in their system, whether it's GHB or something else. It may not just be alcohol, but there is somebody. I mean, there are stories that I have read of somebody who has been approached by a man and asked him strange questions, and it was almost like the guy thought he was being.
I remember that.
Yeah. So there are people who've gotten away. There was a story of a guy who woke up in a river. There's people who've woken up, and I think that the kind of slipping a Mickey roofied element, women know not to leave their drink there, but men don't. So I do think that you're absolutely right. So men don't think they're a target population. They don't think that they don't think walking home at night is a problem. Which is a mistake.
Now, yes, and in keeping with what you just said, may I just give a PSA just for a minute here?
Please do.
This public service announcement. Please, anybody listening to my voice, if you, and this is an awkward statement to make, but if you know any young men who are good-looking, athletic, who are like the good-looking and athletic young men, let's just put it that way, please tell them, do not drink alcohol in public. I know this is hard too. I mean, I know this is hard to say, but don't drink alcohol in public. Just don't do it. Go drink at the flat. Go drink at the frat house. Go drink when you're home with your friends. Don't drink when you're out in public, because you become a target. And the SMKs are out there. I absolutely believe they are out there, and they are scoping these young men before the night that they're out drinking, because they are picking these young men very carefully. If you just go look at how good looking and athletic these young men are. So just please don't drink in public. If you're going to go out in public or a bar with your friends, I don't know, just drink water, drink soda, just drink something else. Secondly, if you are out and you have to drink with your friends, stay with your friends. Stay with your friends. Don't go with anyone, no matter how good looking the girl is, no matter how good looking the boy is. Don't go out. Don't leave your friends. You come with them, go with them. Don't leave them. And thirdly, and lastly, if you're out, and I don't care how you were the captain of the football team, I don't care how athletic you are, how big and strong you are, if you're a young, good-looking guy, don't walk by yourself at night, even if it's just going out to the car and you're in a remote area. Don't walk. You're at the most social time in your life. You're always around people. You should always be around people. Don't walk anywhere. Don't walk at night by yourself, even if you're a football player. Just don't do it. Anyway, that's my PSA. Please put that out to any young men that you know and make them listen to it. Because
I'll put that out. I'm going to take that out of this conversation and just do an individual thing. I've actually posted PSAs on my social media, but I really appreciate you making that statement because you've encapsulated so many of the case histories into, what has happened in those cases into that PSA, where people walk to their car, they're alone, and there may be women involved. That's what's even more terrifying is that
okay,
the
let me
lure
tell
is
you.
a woman. The lure is a woman,
Right.
so a man doesn't see it coming.
And let me finish that PSA by just saying the reason I say this to you is because I want to save your life and because the smiley face killers are real. They are out there and they are targeting these exact profile of young men. And just you have to keep yourself safe because they are out there and they are looking.
Yeah, I can't even list. It's at least 10 or 15 of these young men who have left a bar by themselves, whether they got kicked out, whether the kick out was very suspicious in itself, kicked out and not let back in. So there they are outside alone, and then they
Now
disappear.
let me tell you who is actually doing the SMK killings. It is an operational group. I used to have a chart of this. I probably have it somewhere, but this is an operational group, and the only way you would know this is know the structure of this group is if you work in intelligence agencies, task forces in the national security world. This is an operational group that is highly financed, that has unlimited resources, and that is constructed of. In the middle of this, it's like a triangle. In the middle, there's going to be a honeypot, which means a very attractive young woman and probably a very attractive young man. That is the honeypot core of the operational group. Then there's going to be a third person, who is going to be the logistical person, the logistical leader, sort of, who is the third man, who is the person who actually makes sure everything is going smoothly, that the target is doing what they're supposed to do, like consuming alcohol and, looking to, get laid probably. And that's the person who gives the green light or the red light on the entire operation. Then at the outside peripheral, you're going to have the two security people. These are going to be pretty large, strong men, most likely, because they're going to be probably very large, but also they'll be on the peripheries, so they will probably make themselves invisible. So you're talking about a fire team. It's kind of like a fire team of a task force, operational group of at least 5 people. That's at least 5 people right there, but they won't be together. They'll be, spread out. The security, it has to be at least 2 people on security because they might need to overpower a guy who was a captain of the football team very quickly and very efficiently. So therefore, the security has to be 2 men, at least 2 men. So you're talking about a fire team of 5 people at least, but who may not necessarily be together unless you're looking for them. You're not going to know that they're even together because they're only going to be giving eye signals to each other.
Or sending text through messaging or something like
exactly.
that. Code words.
Exactly.
Yeah, code
exactly. Words. And most likely the security guys are not even going to be needed ever throughout the entire night, but they'll still be present. Right. They'll still be there. So this is the kind of group that we're talking about. And I believe that this is a functioning, highly trained group that is carrying out ritualistic sacrifice murders. Because the pattern that I see here, the pattern that I see here is the one that goes back to ancient religions. In ancient times, and you can study this, you can look this up, in ancient religions, there used to be what's called the law of sacrifice. Law of sacrifice means that you take the best of the flock. In other words, you have a flock of sheep. You had to take the best of your rams. It always had to be the male animal. The male animal. The female animals were not good for sacrifice. They were not considered to have the whatever value is needed by God or whatever. And so it always had to be the male animal, the ram or the bull, and it had to be the most perfect animal. It had to be the animal that didn't have any defect. In other words, didn't have a single gray hair on his wool.
Like the unspotted lamb or whatever.
Exactly. It had to be the most perfect animal for if you're trying to honor your god. In this case, it's a very dark god. But they are. So that explains it always being a male, and that explains it always being these good-looking athletes, athletic young men, because this is a sacrifice ritualistic killing. And also, under the law of sacrifice, you had to use a method of killing that actually leaves the creature untouched until it's time to consume them. That's why the best methods of killing the animal, the male animal under sacrifice, was always water or fire or water, because it doesn't harm or break any bones on the creature. But until the moment of it, the creature is being consumed, and even after they're being consumed, the body is not damaged, and supposedly that has some connection with the spirit that is given over to the god or something.
I think that there's a spiritual aspect to it, definitely.
So I believe that this is the nature of this operational group. They are probably they are paramilitary trained, and they are very real, but they are carrying out a religious function, which is the weird crossover here, and I believe that they are being funded, they are being sponsored from globalist sources. And when I say globalist, I mean the elite powers in control, the ones that tell the nations what to do and give the nations their marching orders. That's what I believe is going on.
Fascinating. That's just an amazing analysis. I mean, many of my conclusions were very similar to yours. It's just like a remarkable. They have to be working in a group and trained to pull this off, to not just the abduction, but also the dumping, So there's also a very somewhat seemingly highly intelligent, concerted effort to put the bodies back in the water. That's why they're not seen. That's why the person is never seen drowned or anything. They're just found in the water. But yeah, it's just
highly skilled, highly trained group. And they know what they're doing. And the most important part is the cover-up afterward, because they always know they're going to be secure, and that higher-ups are always going to tell the police what they're supposed to look at and what they're not. And they're very secure that they will never be interfered with, ever.
That's just incredible, because in some of these cities like Minnesota, where there's been so many bodies found in the water, there should just be a PSA for these students to be careful at night, but there's not, And I think that there's also an aspect in these cases where there's a lot of money involved. The parents, the universities don't want the parents to know their kids could be abducted and end up in water. So I think that's one aspect of it.
Yeah, it's the old "we don't want to hurt tourism"
absolutely.
argument.
It's like what is it, Jaws or whatever? Come on, you can't say there's a shark in the water.
Right. So let's let people keep on being crunched up and eaten.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what's so heartbreaking about this, because these are deaths that we need to prevent. Yes. We need to do something. And as simple as, and I swear, I believe that if one of these young men are targeted by the SMKs and he goes to that bar and he doesn't drink, he refuses to drink alcohol that night, I believe they will leave him alone.
I think so too.
Because they're an operational group. They're highly disciplined, and they have certain parameters that they have to work within. And if there's not alcohol in the young man's system, that could blow their cover right there. Absolutely. That they have been so careful to build up for so long, so they give the police that investigative out. It's just another drunk kid. He fell in the shallow water, and they cannot.
But there have been a few cases where people have been attempted abduction. If you go to my YouTube channel, William Ramsey Investigates, there was one in Marham in the UK where a guy was out jogging, fit the profile, young, healthy, and 2 guys jumped out of a van and tried to get him, and the police say there were other people in that van. And so that it looked like it was an operation, like there were more people involved. And there was something like that happened down here in L.A. where guys were driving around in vans abducting women. They caught them only with one, but there may have been other victims. And they would put them in the van and chain them. And they were sloppy, not like these SFK guys. I think the SFK guys they make sure people get drugged first.
I don't believe they would ever go after a woman. It doesn't fit into the ritualistic aspect of these murders. I think they will only go after males, and but let me tell you about the one that you just said where they jumped out at the young man running. Yes, let me tell you about that. There is an indicator that there is some breaking ranks in this operational group. And I'll tell you what it is, because when you're doing an activity like this, murders, all over the nation and maybe all over the world too, it does have some psychological toll. And what happens is members of, no matter how well trained the group is, there can be some breaking ranks. And the creation of the smiley face is an act of rebellion from within the group, because that is not authorized. That is definitely not authorized to be done. But there's going to be a certain amount of a neurosis going on in the minds of people who are doing this kind of stuff, no matter how well trained they are. And I believe the fact that they're out there creating the smiley face, it's just kind of a way for them to blow off steam and to kind of let the world know, get some notoriety, and probably the people who have been doing those smiley faces are eliminated even from the group.
Interesting.
And probably replaced by others who, again, probably go back to making the smiley face because they like that and they enjoy it.
Well, that's interesting you say that, because in the case of Booth, there's a belief on the investigators and the mother that he was set up to be eliminated because he didn't say that he was going to be part of it, that he... Oh. Interesting, yeah. So that's what they think happened. And there was a smiley face on that case. That was outside of Philadelphia. But,
because the only way that you're going to have a group like this functioning and doing this job so well, incredibly well, for so long, over such a long expanse, over so many states, is for them to have unlimited resources and sponsorship. I mean, they got to be very well financed, very well trained. And that has to be from global shop. That's not a national thing. It's not the CIA, it's not some national group. That comes above. That's the only way that could be.
Fascinating. Yeah, that's well, I really appreciate you providing that analysis. I think yours is really the best that I've heard of all the people in the 20 years of people investigating this case. I think yours is really, really spot on. It's amazing. So I really appreciate that. You, just to kind of wrap up, Mr. DeSouza, you are also going to be coming out with other books. Is that correct?
Yeah, my next book is called The Clear Hearers, and that'll be coming out in a couple of months or so.
And then I saw that you have a couple other Dimensionals, Transcendence. So you have some other kind of books on the same subject. What was the name of the extra-dimensional one? What was that? The prior book?
Oh, that's my latest book that's out now. It's called The Extra Dimensionals: True Tales and Concepts of Alien Visitors. And
do you have like a website for these books?
Yes, my website is johntama.books.com. John Tama, T like Tom, A, M like Mary, A. johntama.books.com. My email is johntama.books@gmail.com. And that I can be reached there anytime. My books are available pretty much only through Amazon and through because of an agreement with Amazon, through Amazon, and I can put it out through my website also eventually.
Awesome. Well, I really enjoyed reading The Para Investigators. I thought it was a great book. I definitely recommend that. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about the book and your opinion about the smiley face killers and put out that PSA, which I will extract from our interview and also get that out there. So thank you very much.
Put some scary music behind it too. Wake these kids up.
Yeah, it's legit. It is for real. There's no question. So John, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Was serious.
No, John DeSouza, author of The Para Investigators. Thank you, Mr. DeSouza.